We've got a wonderful dad with 3 amazing children, a beautiful wife from Perth, Western Australia, to share some of his stories of being a dad and maybe give us his 3 dad tips too at the end. And we've had the privilege of knowing Kevin for, well, it's like almost 6 years now. No, 4.5 years perhaps. And it's been a great pleasure to have gotten to know you and to, one day I'll meet your family. We sort of know each other at a distance. But how did you come to hear about Dads4Kids and connect with the Good to Great course? Tell us that story first.
I was 19 and I was running a supermarket. This is where it started. I bought a pallet of tomatoes off a fella that I didn't really know but I trusted. Turns out his brother-in-law was Cleon. He introduced us, and from there Cleon, very generous, very giving man. From there, Cleon introduced us. So if you trace it back, if you trace everything back, that's where it started.
With a pallet of tomatoes.
Pallet of tomatoes. And Cleon mentioned it a couple of times, the Good to Great course, and he said, "Oh, Kev, I need someone to come and give me feedback on how I'm doing on leading this course, on how I facilitate, whether I'm good, bad or ugly, tell me." And I was like, I can help you out with that. I didn't know that this is where I'd be sitting 5 years later. No idea.
And so, you've told me a number of times how life-changing the course was. So for those who maybe don't know, Dads4Course has established a Good to Great fatherhood course. It's a 10-week course. We believe it's the hardest fatherhood course in the world, number one. We deliberately made it hard because we modeled the course on the SAS. It's not about guns and bombs and explosions and training as in fitness training, but it's fitness training for dads. And the challenges aren't the guns and the bombs. The challenges are relationships and navigating the human reality and navigating, how do we make our children feel special? How do we really look after our wives as we should as husbands, which of course is a challenge for us all as men. So that Good to Great course, you did it. How did it affect you? It seemed to affect you, have a profound effect. Can you tell us, how did it affect you?
So every time you make a decision, Warwick, you can make a decision with your head or with your heart. And all of the decisions, or most of the decisions that I've made in my life, I've made them with my head. Good to Great showed me that if you follow your heart, it's a far, far better road. Far easier, far simpler. It's still got challenges, it's still pretty tough. But if you follow your heart and you learn about yourself, you learn and you think, you model yourself off of people, and that's what I'd done. I'd modelled myself off of people that had followed their decisions with their head and not with their heart, and they didn't do what they believed in their heart. They did what they were told to believe in their head, and it really started a journey making decisions on my heart. And making those decisions, people can tell. People tell that they can see the difference.
The course, because I actually helped write the course with my wife, she helped me. It doesn't actually say specifically word for word, make decisions with your heart. I guess that's the suggestion, and it's certainly the hope of the course, perhaps. But so, how did you pick that up? How did you pick that? Is it because it's about that life is about relationship, and that is an issue of the heart, as opposed to a transaction of some sort of material transaction. How did you pick that idea up that you had to start making decisions from your heart instead of your head?
It it was never. I never put it into words until just now, because you asked. But what I could see is I sat in a room. I sat in a room with men, all on different trajectories. The majority of them were already on a trajectory of living happily, and it forced me to think, geez, I don't think I'm on the same trajectory as these guys. But there were guys in the room that were on a different trajectory, and I could see that I was not headed where I wanted to head. 11, 12 weeks stretched out, a little bit longer. I think we delayed a couple of weeks, school holidays. And I had to work out why I'm not on the journey that I thought life was about. Everyone looked at me and went, I wish I was you. I've got a lot of people that wish they were me. But it was hard. It was really hard. Every day I was capped. Like, I was at my limit. And I couldn't work out why it was. And after 12 weeks, I started to try, and I could and implement some of the small changes. And there was instant reactions from people. Instant.
Tell us about those reactions within your family, particularly your children, and then let's talk about the reactions with your wife. What happened between you and your children as you were doing this good to great fathering course, Dads for Kids, good to great fathering course?
Oh, interesting one, Warwick. As I was doing the course, there was, and I say it with all the respect, and it's something that I've got to talk to my wife about. There was a reluctance because the family had to make even more sacrifice for me to be out of the house for one night a week, right?
Correct.
I wasn't solving the problems at home as it was, and one more night without me solving problems in the home, it was a sacrifice. So for that period of time, I had to... and I didn't know why I was there. I had no idea. So for a long period of time, I had to work out, and I had to prove that it was what I could see was worthwhile, with measurable improvements in my behaviour. So the hardest thing to do when somebody takes something from you that you're entitled to is to forgive them, and that's the hardest thing to do, especially when everybody around you is, no, you're entitled to that, go and take it, and you don't, and you let it go. Because that's not how I've been brought up, especially in business. No, you off to court you go, you fight for it, and you don't always get it, but you put a lot of effort into fighting for very little, when what you should be putting effort into is proving that letting the small things, and for some people losing a pen is a small thing. When it becomes tens of thousands of dollars, becomes small things, people find that hard to. They find it hard to manage. Like they can't put that into perspective, and that's a transition that becomes difficult.
What was your response? How did your children respond to you in this process of change? Can you give us an example? Just give us a little example of something that happened between you and one of your children or all your children.
The small things, um, um, uh, the small things are actually really big things. So, um, gaining the respect of my kids, um, that was, it's not done with big things. It's done with the little things. Um, it's not telling them how to solve their problems. It's teaching them how to work it out. But it reminded me of the little things that my mum said. My dad didn't talk to me a lot. He supported me, but didn't sort of say a lot. But I remember a point in my life when my mum started telling me um, telling me how good looking I was. And I'm like, I always thought I was ugly. In fact, now I know I'm not attractive. But it made me believe in myself. And in her eyes, I was gorgeous. When my mum used to say that, when she started saying, probably around the age of 12 or 13, you can do anything that you want to do. You can be however you want to be. You're very clever. You know, and I would repay her with affection, and I knew that would give her that gave her strength. These are the little things that I started doing with my kids, and the reaction that you get's not what you expect. When I first started telling my daughter how clever she was, she stopped going to school. Telling her that she was special, she told me to stop telling her because it was making it difficult for her to go to school. The flip side of that is, 4 or 5 years down the track, she was blaming me for not going to school. 4 to 5 years down the track, she's online, she's self-taught online school. She's asking me questions in her Bible study. She was not religious. She still claims she's not religious. But I can tell she's now making decisions with her heart, and she's feeling the benefits of making decisions with her heart, not her head. And over 4 or 5 years, these improvements are measurable. Her friends that are going to school are on flatline trajectories, like they are flat, and they all want to be Jazz. You can tell. I've had Jazz come to me and say, my friends want to live in our house. They want to be, and I'm Jazz. They want to be you, and they think that not going to school is the answer, but it's not. It's making decisions with your heart, not with your head.
That's beautiful. And tell us, I remember you telling me about what happened after the Good to Great course. It actually affected your work in a very good way. You saw a productivity increase in your employees, and actually your bottom line, if your business, your turnover increased and things got better at work because of doing this Good to Great fathering course. I'm just fascinated by that. Can you explain to those listening today how and why?
I've run big business with structure. Everybody around me would say, Kev, you made it look easy. And very quickly found myself getting promoted time and time again. Results of hard work, and retail's a challenging environment.
Because you were a senior store manager at Woolworths, weren't you?
Yeah, that's how it would be described. I always saw myself. As a new store manager. But when I think back, I did. Yeah, I got to senior, and only just. But only just, and something in my heart told me that retail, once kids were born, that retail wasn't sustainable for a family. As I look at it more, I look at the sacrifice that my leaders made for the positions that they were in, and how much they sacrificed in their families to rise in the ranks, and what was expected from a sacrifice point of view to rise further in the ranks above supermarket management into supervision. And I just wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared. And then you join small business, and you start, and it feels pretty lonely. You back yourself. You build up a little bit of equity, and then you invest, and then you start investing in people, and you can't retain them. We're an untrade. To do what we do, there's no trade qualification. But the person I was, the people that would work for me, were not the committed type, because that's the environment that we're in. And my nephew started working for me nearly 9 years ago. And my commitment to him was above the ordinary, because everybody else would come and go. They'd let you down. They wouldn't commit to you. They weren't there when you needed them. But it was me. I wasn't there when they needed me. But when families start to work for you, all of a sudden there's a greater level of commitment. And there was a difficult time. My wife was having an operation. Young Dill, he said to me, Kevin, it's probably easier if I just have the week off. It'll take all the stress off you. You won't have to worry about me. And he was right. I don't have to supervise him. I can just take the time off and focus on the family. But I had a flashback to good to great, and I said, Dill, I trust you. I've got faith that you will not only get this, but you will smash it. And I won't have to worry about you. And it will take pressure off next week. And something changed. He changed. It was the first time I'd given him positive feedback. It was probably the first time anybody had given him encouraging feedback. Before that, it was instruction, follow-up, instruction, follow-up. You've done a good job today, here's a reward. But it was the first time anybody had given him the keys to the car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he stepped up. And that was, here we are. Because 4 years, you can get commitment of 4 years out of somebody, that's easy, right? But to get 8 years is a little bit tougher. It's a little bit tougher. And people underestimate how challenging and how tough that is.
It's amazing, eh? And so your actual bottom line actually improved, didn't it, from the Good to Great course, correct?
Yeah, as a result of that conversation, Dill had measurable improvements, and we were able to pass on another pay rise. And we were able to explain to him why he earned the pay rise. And it started to have a flow-on effect, and piece by piece. Everything in that course, you can't just walk out and just go, yep, I'm going to be a different person. I'm going to be a different leader. 4 to 5 years later, how do you make a small business get past? Is it 80% don't make 5 years? How do you get past that 5-year hurdle? If you are not a gracious, giving, forgiving, generous person, and you haven't taught the people around you how to be forgiving, gracious, generous, and spend time with them, and they won't support you. You'll lose that support, and it becomes very difficult. Very difficult. In the business world, he's just not ready yet. In the business world, but we better have a chat to him and let him know his options. In the business world, your fuel is stress. Your fear of having to go home and tell your family that you're no longer in a leadership role and you've gone backwards. That's what drives you. And when you lead with your heart, and the business world is modelled on decisions of the heart. But when you actually lead with your heart and you believe what you're saying, and you believe in yourself, when everybody around you is doubting you, you don't miss. You're bang on. You don't miss.
That's cool. That's good. I understand too the Good to Great course helped you with your relationship with your dad, because that's one of the things we as men have to do. We have to resolve the past to better the future, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened?
Oh, that's a big one. That's a big one. And on that journey, I am seeing measurable improvements in my dad. I don't often feel like writing him a letter. I know when I do, it opens something up inside of me that has to be aired. So it's difficult to do because, but by the same token, when I air it, it's because it airs. I know it's going to air it in him. I know it's going to get him thinking. I've already thought about it, but I have to word it accurately. And I try to write him a letter twice a year, and it's I've managed once, but just this morning I wrote him another one, thanking him for his help last week. He's got no idea the hurdle that he helped me get over last week, and by doing that, I know that he'll get more out of it than I will. At the time that it took, I know that I did it for him. But as a result, boom, touched by God again.
Wow. That's very, very cool. And you've also seen things turn around in your marriage for the better, if I understand correctly. Can you explain a bit about that and how things are going for you now? how they were?
When you grow up, you watch a bit of TV, right? And you assume that a marriage is either going to be, or you hope it's going to be like it is on TV. My parents' marriage wasn't like it was on TV. And my marriage was headed on that same trajectory as my parents'. Why? Because I believed that my dad was happy. Caravan, car, boat, home, super, retired. And it took me a little bit of looking to realise that he's not as happy as he hoped. He thought it was going to be like it was on TV. And it should be like it is on TV. At least it should look like it is on TV from the outside. From the inside, to get it to look that good, there's a lot of hard work. My wife and I, we met at the same point in our lives. And we were both at the same period of life. And we've gone on a journey of growth that has kept us both on the same growth trajectory. And there are long periods of time, Warwick, where those growth trajectories didn't line up. And that was it's my responsibility to fix it.
But I thought it was the wife's responsibility to fix those sort of things. I thought the wife had to fix the relationship. I thought we could just cruise.
Yeah, just turn the TV on, grab a beer and she'll fix it.
That's a big change, isn't it, Kevin? It's a big change from saying relationships my wife's problem, the family's my wife's problem, to saying no, relationships my problem and my challenge, and I've got to work on it, and I've got to work in the family. And in some ways, the Good to Great course, the challenge of the Good to Great course is to, if you like, force men or push men into that position where they are taking responsibility for the relationship and taking responsibility for the children and actively bettering themselves and working on their relationship. Does that make sense, what I've just said?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
So what
and
happened?
and um, uh, that's a difficult journey. Um, it's challenging when all you've focused on is your career, and you realise that your family is not as it is in the movies, and because it's not like it is in the movies, um, you come home and you can't think. Chemically, you stop thinking when you start focusing on your family, making decisions from your heart. Tough ones, some really tough ones. Everything changes slowly because you're changing what you believe and you're changing what people around you believe. And not everybody wants to go on that journey. Not everybody wants to do the hard work. The hard work is rewarded by extra thinking time. So as men, we're designed to think and take action. When somebody screams, when somebody gets upset around you, when things aren't flowing, your thinking stops and you get focused on one particular part of your task. and you forget about everybody else. But when everybody around you is happy, your thinking increases. Your capacity to think goes from 3 hours a day to 20 hours a day. I've had stints, Warwick, and people say that I'm stupid. People tell me it's unhealthy. But I've had periods of days, days where I can't, where I'm thinking for days to solve problems. Not able to sleep. And it always comes at the end of a period of rest. I'll sleep well for 2 or 3 nights. I'll have a problem. I know there's a problem coming up. I'll sleep well. I'll work to physical exhaustion, go to the gym, do my thing. I'll sleep well. I'll be eating well, and then it'll just come to me, and I won't sleep until I solve the problem. And my wife doesn't know how I do it. I don't know how I do it, but I do know if I don't solve the problem, it will stay there, and it will stop growth on everybody around me. And the strength that I get, if I go to work the next day and I apologise to the guys if I'm grumpy, guys, I didn't sleep last night, ignore me today if I'm a little bit short, they've already forgiven me. But they don't understand. They do not understand why I don't sleep. They don't know how I do it. How do I do it? I committed to run a supermarket. We had twins, and there were lots of nights where I would go to bed. I would knock off at 1 a.m. and my wife was on deck from 1 a.m. Weeks at a time, where I'd go to bed at 1 and I'd be up at 5, in the store by 6. Days. I can remember weeks of it, because with twins, if one of them aren't sleeping, somebody's got to be awake with them. And I know what's possible. There were managers that, that struggled to, they were established and kids had grown up and moved on. Kevin, I don't know how you do it. Don't know how you do it. But I did it because I had to. I didn't want to let my family down, didn't want to let my team down. If I needed help, I had people I could call.
So you've always been a pretty committed dad. It's just that the good to great sort of basically launched you into an even deeper commitment and a deeper, gave you tools to use to build your relationships. Is that correct?
Bit more complicated than that, but that's the main tool was to make decisions not with your head, but with your heart. Doing what's best for your family is learning to make decisions with your heart.
And
you can only have the confidence. You can only have the confidence. Sorry, Warwick. You can only get the confidence to make decisions with your heart because there's lots of people around you that will say, no, that's not the right decision. You can only have the confidence if the people around you are supporting you. If they're not, you've got to go with the business decision. And the business decision is it's your job to lead. It's not your job to grow someone. It's their family's job. But when you lead and you are their family, because they know and they trust you more than they trust their own family, they lift. They give you more. And retail is an environment where you are their family.
Kevin, you support Dads4Kids on a monthly basis, very graciously and very, we greatly appreciate it, because Dads4Kids' dream is to help all dads be great dads for the sake of their kids, and to give our children the very best start in life. And I know you believe in that. You've experienced it yourself through the courses and through the different things that you've done with us over the years. Actually, just talking about different things you've done over the years, I read you this story from yourself, and you sent it to me way back in the day, in 2 years ago. Your daughter sent this to you after you'd had been at a weekend camp with her, a dad's camp, the big camp out yesterday. Dad, you are the best person I've met in my life. So this was at that stage, she would have been about, say, 12 years of age, correct?
Yeah.
Dad, you are the best person I've met in my life. Thank you for one of the best experiences of my entire life. I love how you always encourage and support me. I'm so sorry if I've ever said anything to you that has made you feel bad. Sometimes I just don't know what I'm saying, and I really wish you would understand it, which you probably do because you're a psychologist. You probably, in brackets it says, you probably just don't know it yet. I'll love to do anything with you again. I hope there's always going to be something we can do together. I also love how much effort you put into trying to be a better dad. You'll always be the best person in my life, but as well as mum. So she's putting that caveat in there that she loves mum, she loves dad. But is there a story behind this text? Is there a story behind this beautiful exclamation of love?
Those messages wouldn't have come if I didn't do the work and understand where my daughter was at, what she needed to move forward. Because that was one of the very first messages that felt real. And it was a result of the work that we'd put in from good to great. And part of that was going on that big camp out. That's not something I would have normally done. In fact, I wasn't the greatest dad on that big camp out. But I was the dad that that turned up. My Jazzy's cousin came. Uncle Ben missed that one, and oh no, he was there actually. But it was spending time with Jazz in a really nice, friendly environment, and that was her saying, "Hey, I enjoy spending time with this guy," and I understand a little bit about why he can't always spend time with me, because he's just trying to help people.
Well, that's really beautiful, Kevin. I think this is a beautiful testimony to you as a dad, and hopefully it's an encouragement to you. Just getting back to some of the question I was going to ask, you help, pardon me, you help Dads4Kids financially on a regular basis, and we appreciate it because we need regular support and we need partnership to keep on doing things we do, to keep running the Dads4Kids classes, to keep doing the courageous courses, to keep doing the men's leadership summits, help men be great dads, be great husbands. and really turn the tide of fatherlessness in Australia. Give me 3 reasons why you believe people should support Dads for Kids. Just 3. 3 simple reasons why people should support Dads for Kids financially.
I wanted to show gratitude for what was, but you don't have to. Why are you doing it? Well, Dads for Kids reminded me of, not reminded me, but reassured me that life is short, that there is more to it. I don't think there's 3 reasons specifically, but because of what you believe, Warwick, because of we could all say that family comes first, and sometimes we make an error and we use family as an excuse to give up. Other times, when we lead with our heart, we're reminded that family is the reason why we do it, not why we should give up. Every time I see something related to Dads for Kids, it reminds me not to give up. It reminds me not to use family as a reason to give up. It reminds me that it has built my skills as a leader, because anybody can manage on numbers. That's easy. But I know that real leaders manage with their heart, without using a family as an excuse.
So I want to ask you for 3 reasons. I understand what you're saying, your hesitancy. Just in one sentence, just pulling all that down into one sentence, why should blokes support Dads for Kids? Just one sentence.
The more you put in, the more you give, the more comes back. And Dads for Kids, will never give up on you. They will always be there.
Well, thank you. And this last part of the interview, just going to talk a bit about this incredible trip you did with your youngest son, who was 9 years of age at the time. You went out into the Western Australian deserts in a dune buggy, and we're going to see some shots here as well. What did it feel like when you met at the airport there? Was it at Laverton that you met?
Yeah, Con and I drove out of Perth, took the week off work, drove out of Perth, and we launched from Laverton Airport. So we drove to Laverton, 2 days, camping on the side of the road, and yeah, jumped in a dune buggy. Just for a 10-year-old, like the coolest thing on the planet. It looks huge. To me, it was like, oh, it's not as big as I remember it. But to Con, it was the biggest thing he'd ever seen, and the coolest thing he'd ever seen. The guys from Dakar Tours, wearing their shirt this morning, just a bit of support, bit of a plug for the guys. The guys know what they're doing. They run their business with their heart. Every decision that was made on that trip was made in the interest of the guys that were on the tour. Every step of the way. There was never a time where they put themselves first. And it was a really, really good trip. Really.
And so you we're about, I think you in the dune buggy mostly at the rear. Number one, they had
Yeah.
another truck, I think, with supplies as well. And there was probably about a dozen guys on bikes, trail bikes, correct?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And you and your son actually also had to go on the trail bikes for a while, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Con got a dink, and I got into first gear, first time. Yeah. Um, and it was a big deal for Con to go over a sand dune on a dirt bike. That was a big deal.
There were some pretty scary conditions, and you actually had a pretty good journey because usually on these journeys, blokes do get hurt because it is the Wild West, quite literally. It's right out in the desert, and they can push things to extremes. But it seemed like God was with you because there was no injuries. Is that right for the whole trip?
No injuries and no damage to equipment. Every time there's a puncture, it holds everything up for an hour. Everybody's held up, and you miss opportunities. When the guys, and this is just Batesy, when he describes it, the guys that are reckless, they're focused and they're looking right at the ground in front of them to make sure they don't trip up. It's the first tour that he can remember that everything slowed down, and the guys didn't talk about how they jumped over a log. They spoke about what they'd seen, and we got to see more every day because we had more time because we were going slower. You go fast, you trip up more.
And you were out in the salt plains. How did that feel, being right out in those beautiful flat salt plains?
So it was the first chance that Con got to jump in the buggy and have a bit of a spin. That he felt confident. There was nothing to hit. That big open space, when you're in a little tiny buggy, and we got a couple of opportunities out there by ourselves where possibly nobody had ever been before, and do some discovering that people hadn't discovered. When we found one of Frank Hahn's landmarks, the rock that he left his initials on. Craig's been studying his diary for years, and this was the first time that he had clarity on the tour without the stress of reckless guys, to have the patience to follow the diary word for word, find the ridge because he remembered it, and not only that, we had the time to go kilometres off the track to find it. The clarity that he had on that tour, because everybody had slowed down, put us in a place that people haven't been to for I don't know how long. I don't know if anybody else knows where Frank Hahn's initials are, but Craig has been trying to find it for years, and he found it. Because he had
Frank Hahn's, for those who mightn't understand, was a very early Australian explorer, a very well-known, respected bushman, and he had surveyed those areas right out there in the outback. Last questions we finished today. I won't ask you for 3 tips for a dad, but I'm just going to ask you for 1. What advice would you give to dads who are listening today to be a better dad, to be a better husband? What were your 1 thought? And maybe you've already shared it with us already, but give it to us again if it is you've already shared it. But tell us what your 1 tip would be for dads.
Commit. Just everything that you say you're going to do it. Just do it. Don't do it today. Some things are going to take a little bit of work. Say it out loud. Once you say it out loud, you'll achieve it. You'll be able to do it. It may take some time, but yeah, just commit. Tell somebody. Say it out loud. Tell them your plans. Tell them your dreams. And you'll get there.
Just do it. And thank you so much. It's great talking to you, Kevin Allen. We really appreciate your sharing your heart with us. And God bless you and your beautiful family. And all the best. And all the best for you and your family and for your future. God bless you.